Welcome to another episode of Corporate CPR, where we breathe life back into your organization, projects, and processes, giving you insights to recovery and avoiding corporate mortality events. Today, we'll be talking about how to get your leadership team from good to great, and joining us to contribute to the conversation is Aneace Haddad. Welcome, Aneace.
Hi, Jana. Thank you.
We're so glad you could join us. Can you share a little bit about your background?
Yeah, so I'm originally a programmer from many years ago. Started out as a techie, became an entrepreneur. I built a payment software company in France, grew it to 30 countries. So my clients were banks, the large payment organizations, Visa, MasterCard, Amex, banks around the world. And then sold it in 2007. And I had a very big team in Singapore, so I was traveling in Singapore very often, and that's where I moved around that time as well. And then I discovered that I liked people more than computers, and that sent me off in a completely new direction that I hadn't even been planning for as an executive coach and leadership facilitator with the C-suite. So it was quite a transformation relatively late in life. That's my background. Originally from the US, but as we were talking a moment ago, I left 35 something years ago. And I've lived all my life pretty much overseas.
Wow, that's fantastic. So, obviously a lot of people have probably heard the phrase good to great from Jim Collins' book. And so maybe we should just start with a little bit of foundation and talk about what is the difference between good and great, and why is good not good enough?
Yeah, that's a great question, no pun intended. Interestingly, this topic has kind of blossomed after COVID. I mean, it was big back when the book was out and everything like that, but that goes back some time now. And then something happened post-COVID, and the number of top teams that I've worked with that are interested in the topic good to great to kind of drive the theme of their top team retreats. That has really blossomed. So why has that blossomed? There was around 10 years ago, the first time I saw hints of this, around 10 years ago, I was coaching the CEO of a textile factory in India, a few thousand people. They had, you mentioned mortality events, they had real mortality events. I mean, they were having accidents, they were having fatalities. They spent a lot of money on processes, and they improved a lot of things, and they had the dashboards and everything all in place. They had processes, but something was still missing. So when I was coaching the CEO, I asked them, how would you rate your level of commitment to safety? I wasn't coaching him on safety because I don't know anything about safety. And he said his commitment was very high, probably 9 out of 10. And so the conversation, because he had an intuitive feel that it wasn't 10, the conversation became, what if people are dying because that's not a 10? He became angry because he said, it's impossible to be a 10. He said, I've got a few thousand people here. They do stupid things. Many of them are uneducated. A forklift will be going down the shop floor, and somebody wants to get to the other end. They'll jump on the front of it to get to the other end. They know they're not supposed to do that. He says, I can't be on everyone's back. So his mental structure for what 10 out or great for what 10 out of 10 was impossible. And then he stayed with that question, even though he was angry with me at first. He stayed with the question, and then 2 or 3 weeks later, he told me this in the next coaching day. He was real excited. He said, I was on the shop floor, and an elderly janitor slipped and twisted his ankle. I stopped and took care of him, waited for the safety people to come. I put my jacket under his head. He said, all of that was 9 out of 10. That's what I would have usually done. But I was wondering, what would 10 out of 10 look like? That was the big mantra. What would that look like? And he said, once the safety people said the man was okay, he just needs to go home and rest, he said, I put him in my car. I drove him home. took him out of the car, brought him into his house. I made sure his wife would make sure he doesn't get out of bed for a while and he takes care of himself. I had tea with the man and his wife. And that was an aha moment that really triggered a lot, because it pushed him over into a very human, caring kind of mode. And that's where he discovered what great was for him. His 10 out of 10 commitment to safety was really showing care. And then that spread through the company. So that was the first time I had a hint of that. And now I see more and more teams want to explore, what is that? What is that next level? And they each find something different, but it's always something human. It always gets to be, it always comes back to that somewhere.
And what do you, I guess, have you encountered times where teams aren't crossing that threshold, and what are the things that prevent them from getting to great?
Usually, so it doesn't happen, obviously it doesn't happen instantly. It takes some time to work through it. I think the biggest issues that get in the way are changes at the top team. People leave, they get replaced. Was doing some work recently. Half of the top team just got replaced over the last 6 months. A CEO will come in, especially if they're parachuted in from the headquarters and they're running a big team in Asia. And then a few months later, the CEO gets taken out, put in somewhere else. I think those things disrupt some of that process. Generally, I see that as people mature, they're facing those same things also at home. Their kids are growing up, going off to college, or graduating from college. There are health issues involved. There's something that happens at that maturing stage where things shift and people start to see that the way they've done things before, the very process-oriented, all that stuff, they need to move on. There's something different that they have to get past. I don't think anybody really fails at getting past that.
Well, I guess kind of, I don't know if this exactly relates, but I do a lot of listening on like of those top performers, and I guess today is a perfect example. So one of the things I'm trying to get better discipline and better routines, right? Because I really do think discipline is at the root of success. And so one of the things I wanted to do is walk, right? Because it's simple. And not only that, I find that when I walk, because it's so easy for me to just stay at the computer and just, keep working, keep plugging away. It feels productive. But when I walk, I definitely notice a difference. Today, I didn't walk, and I knew, I'm like, I'm making this choice not to walk. And that's not what I said I'd do, but, it's windy outside and it looks miserable and I just don't want to walk. So I guess I'm just wondering how. Obviously, that doesn't mean that ultimately I'll fail, because it's one day and tomorrow I can start again. But sometimes that's really hard to change, right? And to get to that, to get past that, our current habits, I suppose, to put in better habits.
That's why there's so many books written about that. It is very, very hard. My coaching training is in an area called ontological coaching. So it's the way of being, who you're becoming. And I find that generally when we focus on, it's not focusing on the habits themselves, it's focusing on who is it that you're wanting to become through that habit. That becomes much easier than for the habit to develop. But even with that, it can be very difficult. I mean, it's we only change really when we absolutely have to.
It's very true. Well, I guess so. Another thing I'd be curious about, if you've seen or have stories on, is one thing I've noticed just in my, observation of people, because I really do love to observe, what people do and why do they do it. I grew up with, my parents were separated. So I had one dad who, everything was just kind of good enough, and he was happy to go through life and did didn't finish, college, and just got a job. And I'm sure he found meaning. This is from the eyes of a child, but, I'm sure there's meaning, but it was just very much plodding along in life. And life kind of happened to him versus, my other dad, reinvented himself multiple times, had multiple careers. And just, it was a completely different motivation, both motivation and discipline. And, when I reflected on that as part of a child, I felt like, complacency is can be a killer of future success, right? You even see it with, something as simple as weight, right? You get complacent with your diet or your exercise and you gain weight. Like, complacency is not a good thing. And I'm just wondering that's a long lead up to the question of how do people even realize they need to set out on a journey of change?
That's so the last book I wrote, that novel, the first chapter is about that, because it is a hard one, and it really takes, well, I'm not talking, so again, I focus really at the top level, people in their 40s, 50s. So my answer is, the way I look at it is probably quite different than if I was working a lot with 30-year-olds. What I generally see is that change comes when we're really in a crucible moment. Things are changing, there's pressure all around. The way we've been doing things before is not working. We're stuck. It may look great on the outside. We're making progress, things are moving, but something is stuck. And generally change happens in those moments. The textile factory CEO that I mentioned, he wouldn't have gone down the route of human caring and all that if the spreadsheets and the dashboards all worked. He would have continued doing that. That's what he was brilliant at. This was a whole new area that was difficult. There was the CFO, a telco CFO, around that same time that I was coaching, and she was brilliant. So mentioning spreadsheets brought it back. Brilliant at what she was doing, but she had high turnover in her team, and she felt that she needed to work on her empathy, because she got feedback that she was rough. She had rough edges and sharp elbows and stuff. But she was loved by the board. She really delivered great results, but she was losing people. And then she said the most fascinating thing. She said, but I want to start with my son. He's 17 years old. He's under medication for depression. And I feel like the same issues that I'm facing at work are similar to what I'm facing at home. So we started on that. We worked on feedback. She decided she was going to go home and ask her son for feedback. I love 1 to 10 feedback because it makes things measurable for a very analytical mind. And she asked him, she told me in the next session, I asked my son for feedback. He said, you're my mom. I can't rate you as a mother, but if you asked me to rate you as a cook, I'd give you a 0. And she laughed, and she said, we have helpers and maids and cooks and all that. And this was India as well. And but then she started cooking with him, and he started sticking around the kitchen, watching. They were talking, and they bonded over that. He started helping her cook. Every coaching session, she'd be telling me about a meal that she just cooked with her son. And it was that vulnerability and empathy that was seeded with the conversation, was something that all of a sudden came up at work. She wouldn't have done that if there wasn't that pressure. If she wasn't feeling playing at a loss.
Mm. Well, and you said you do a lot with teams. And so, what if you have, maybe a CEO or some sort of senior leader that's identified this? I mean, how do they get the rest of the team to recognize that same stuckness?
Yep. I love that part. I start most team journeys with, there'll be assessments and assessment reports, team assessments, individual three, all of that happens. But in the room with the work, with the team, we'll do a very simple flip chart, 1 to 10, whatever the theme is. If it's good to great, it's 1 to 10, good to where are we today? Great is 10. If it's team cohesion, trust, whatever the theme of the thing is. And I'll have them put 2 dots. Where are we today with a red dot? And where do we need to be to achieve our goals as an organization with a green dot? And then they're always shocked. It's always surprising to see several things come out. And it's almost always the same stuff with just a little bit of difference. You'll see the red dots are spread out a bit, anywhere from 4 to 7. So which indicates that people are seeing things from different angles, and they hadn't realized that before. The green dots are always very high, 8, 9, 10. So they can already see that there's a discrepancy. They're all agreeing they need to get better. They're not agreeing on how they're seeing things yet. They're not agreeing on the 8, 9, 10. There's a spread. The other thing that unpacks is beliefs around what is great. The same question you started with. Why not 10? What does it mean? 10 out of 10 commitment to greatness, 10 out of 10 commitment to team cohesion. And the thing I just described can take half a day of just unpacking. Through that process, it creates alignment and cohesion among them, that they want to aspire, they want to move that needle.
And then I assume they align on what the goal is then. And then I come from a project management background. I want to know, what are all the steps then to get from where I am to where am I going? I mean, I realize the actual path may not be as linear, but is the plan linear like that? Or
generally, you have something starting with vulnerability, authenticity, and trust. Almost every team starts at that point. So go through a few exercises on building those muscles around the team, and very quickly they're able to see each other as human beings rather than roles, and that shift happens very quickly. That's the first shift that needs to happen. Beyond that, it can be very different. Recently, what I've been noticing in top teams, a fascinating area, is that the next workshop goes into what are our must-win battles as an organization? What are the 3, 4, 5 things that we really must win? And then this is after we've done that first workshop. A couple months have gone past. There's been some coaching individually. And we'll do something very similar with the 1 to 10 for each of the battles. How much do we agree that this is a must-win battle? And we start seeing dots in different places. There isn't cohesion in terms of, there isn't alignment in terms of how much we agree that this is a must-win battle. Sometimes it's because it's not clear enough, so then it requires clarity on that. Then we put a dot on how committed am I to this battle? How much ownership do I have of this battle? That starts to reveal a sense of slipping in ownership. If it's a marketing type battle and I'm a technical person, my dot might be a little lower. So then there's a big conversation about, why do we not all at the top own 100% all of these battles? So there begins to be a shift from my area of expertise, my functional unit, my business unit. I need to start pulling up and looking at this larger enterprise-wide mindset. That's a huge transformation. That's quite a big one, which is quite critical. I think that became very critical during COVID and after, really during COVID, because companies couldn't get through COVID without having that kind of enterprise-wide way of looking at things.
Mm. So, interesting about COVID, a feeling that I've had just because, a lot of the return to work debates and things like that, people are like, oh, we've proved that we can work remote 100%. And one of the things that just hasn't set right with me, and I'd be curious your perspective, because you talked about how COVID almost like, because there was a battle to fight, there was an alignment. But overall, beyond those battles, I don't know, that got companies successfully through COVID. I don't know that they necessarily thrived. I feel like there was a lot of survival. And so we're trying to say, oh, we've proven this work from home model against something that I think is more like surviving and not high performing. And I'm not so much asking about work from home, but I want to know more about your thoughts on, do you think companies really thrived, or did they survive? And then, what can be learned from that COVID time that we could take into times where it's not so chaotic and turbulent, that we could apply that same urgency and alignment?
Yeah. So the closest thing that I can see there is this new trend newish trend post-COVID of the CEO really liking this idea of the top team having an enterprise-wide mindset and taking ownership of their functional unit and business unit, as well as 100% ownership of the rest. I think that was very evident during COVID because people pulled together. So how are we going to get through that? It is very survival, but it's kind of like the survival earlier of the individual. It's a crucible moment for a team, and that might be one of, if there is something positive to pull out of that period and that could help them weather other storms, I think that would be it. Having less of a hierarchical mindset, having that you have to deliver your functional unit, business unit results, but also have that enterprise-wide viewpoint. I think that would be the most positive takeaway I'm seeing from that period.
Okay. When you were talking about these teams coming together and, aligning on what 10 is, are there attributes that you see attributes of the team that really facilitate success versus maybe teams that struggle more? Like, are there things that rise above that you're like, oh yeah, that team, they're gonna succeed because they're doing this, this, and this?
Yeah. I often use Lencioni's pyramid, the 5 dysfunctions of a team, with trust at the very bottom, conflict, all that stuff, because that's exactly what you see. The first thing is, how much does the top team trust each other? And I mean really trust, with authenticity, being able to share vulnerably and all that. The next issue they often run into is how comfortable are they mining for conflict, looking for conflict amongst each other and resolving that conflict amongst each other, as opposed to just being polite with each other in the executive committee. So you can sometimes see environments where they're too polite with each other, and that the battles are being run another couple layers down. They're not having the battles at the top team level. They're being run by their people, by proxy. So that's the other thing, is how comfortable they are surfacing those. Another behavior you can quickly see in the top team is, does it feel like a wagon wheel where the CEO is in the middle and everybody is talking to the CEO, and the CEO is talking to this person and then turns talks? Is it looking like that? Or does it look like they're really having real conversations with each other? In the first example, people are listening to prepare what they're going to say next, and you can see that happening. In the second example, they're really listening to each other. So you start to see those kinds of behaviors at the top team level. And you can see where there's a little tweak here, a tweak there that'll kind of bring out the behaviors that are effective. You mentioned you didn't say rigor. You said another word earlier, discipline or something along those lines. You can see it in time. People that are late, start the meeting late. You see little things like that snowball. So time is for me, time is a fantastic proxy for rigor. And every one of those companies fill up their meetings back to back, and it's impossible to get from one meeting to the next. And so they're always running late. So one conversation early on is once they become aware of that and they start looking at time as a proxy for rigor and all that, and how their lack of rigor with time spreads through their teams, then they start looking at restructuring their meeting. Maybe we always finish 10 minutes before, hard stop 10 minutes before, so we always start on time. Yeah, so little things like that start to, they become aware of that, and then that can be quite powerful.
Earlier you were talking about envisioning who you, I guess, are trying to become or something like that. Is that what you want the teams to do then as well? I mean, does that happen at a team level? And what does that like?
So I have a process called Leadership DNA, where you choose 2 or 3 attributes. I've got a list of common leadership attributes, and it creates a phrase that sounds like, I want to be an empowering, trusted leader, for example. There's a process to go out and get feedback on that. Ask people, how would you rate me as an empowering and trusted leader, 1 to 10? What would my 10 look like? Have you seen me at a 9 or a 10? Are there times when I hit that 10? Then another question, what's missing? How do I get there? That's a whole individual process. The team can also create that process. We want to be, there's a mining, the first time I used this a few years ago was in Australia with a mining company. It was at one of the mines that, no, it was a smelter. And they were the main employer of the town. And some of the older people there were remembering when they were very respected by the town people. And one guy says, I remember when I first got my job, I took a paycheck, I went to the bank to deposit it. And the lady, the teller at the bank said, oh, my father and my grandfather and my uncle all work at the smelter. And there was pride. And he said, I haven't felt that in decades. So their statement became, we want to be respected by the community. We want to be a respected community. I can't remember the exact word, but something along those lines. So then they would go out and say, 1 to 10, how respected are we? Have we ever, when are we 10 out of 10 respected? What's missing? How do we get there? So that's the ontological aspect of the team.
You in your book, I think you touch on limiting beliefs. So does that come into this as well?
Yeah, limiting beliefs are all over the place. Limiting beliefs, they can be related to, the first area you see that in this kind of process is 10 out of 10. What does it mean? Perfection. So you'll have some of the people say, yeah, I want to be 10 out of 10 that. Someone else says, no, I don't want to be. I want to be 9 so that I can always grow. And then you start to see how people believe and how that snowballs into other areas. Other limiting beliefs that come up, you can't really trust people. You need to be on their back, kind of like what the textile manager, the textile CEO said. They're going to do stupid things. They're uneducated. They're going to do stupid things. There is a limiting belief behind that. That's disempowering. And once you see it, you start going, okay, I need to treat them as adults. Another limiting belief, it's a fascinating one, is especially you see it shift at that age, is linked to parenthood. Our where we are on our parenting journey and where our peers tend to be in their parenting journey. So you'll notice people using management techniques that work very, very well at home with teenagers. KPIs, rewards for achieving a KPI, punishment, we're going to take your phone away and you got to go to bed early if you don't meet this thing. And then you have people that, then you go to the next level, you go to the board level where mostly their kids have grown up. They realize there's a shifting in our parenting methods. We realize we can't manage adults the way we managed our kids. So then it's a desire to be empowering, to be inspiring. That shift happens kind of organically as people age and their kids grow up. When they become aware of it, that becomes a limiting belief that they can work around and say, oh, I've been treating them like kids. Somebody yesterday, when we had this conversation, he said, oh, just the other day, somebody I was talking to said that she was disappointed in her team. And he said, a board member would never use the word, I'm disappointed in you. That's very much a kind of word we use as a parent. So when we become aware of that, we go, okay, these are adults. These are not teenagers. There's not a single teenager working in my company. They're all adults. Let me treat them as adults. That's quite a big shift.
Is it, do you find that people have a hard time identifying this? I mean, how do they even, just the self-reflection get you there? Or
it's an aha moment. As soon as I bring it up and they start thinking about it, they'll think about situations where that was exactly the case. But parenting is just such a huge part of our lives that there are a lot of people that are very proud of treating their team as their children. They're very protective, and it's a whole management style. The limiting belief is that it's disempowering because it's infantilizing them. So once people become aware of that, it pretty much resolves itself. I don't see people stuck in it after seeing it. They just go, oh my God, yeah, I'm doing it.
do you find though, I mean, like, and I don't know that these are, maybe this is less about limiting beliefs and maybe it goes more back to your story about the mom cook. But, you were talking, these weren't the words you used, but I was thinking like maybe kind of abrasive and rough around the edges with their team, like just, sometimes those are really hard behaviors to change because some of them are innate and then they're ingrained because that's how you've lived for so long, and to approach situations differently under pressure is really difficult. So yeah. How does that start to break down those past maybe less desirable behaviors or reactions?
Those at that level of a career, those behaviors generally produced pretty effective results up to that point. Sometimes that abrasiveness is linked to drive, it's getting things done, and it's been effective, which is why it gets repeated. So the challenge is to not throw everything out. Figure out what is it that I use in my drive, and how do I not misuse that drive? And it's quite a self-reflection thing. One CEO I was working with in Singapore, an international consumer goods company, he was very well known. What word did he use? He was very passionate about results, and he kept getting results. He was great in sales, but now he was running a pretty big team of country heads all across the region. So then he decided that when we have this exact conversation, he was going to shift that passion and drive, not take away completely from results. He needs to watch the results, but shift it to culture as opposed to the actual results themselves. So that was his choice, that if he focuses on the culture and he brings all of his attention to the culture in that same way, the results will come out on their own, and then he'll be more effective because he's not micromanaging people that are supposed to also be very, very gung-ho on their results. So it's a very challenging and it's a fascinating shift to not throw that away and to just kind of bring it back into something that's effective.
Yeah. Well, Aneace, it's been a really interesting conversation. Kind of at the point we should probably wrap up. What are the three things you want to leave top of mind for our audience?
Something we didn't really say, but to me is kind of top of mind. It's how we often, and there may just be one thing actually, we often see kind of self-reflection as a, how to put it, as something we just sit around and do, navel gazing and stuff like that. I really see it as something that we can use immediately to have actionable transformation. I think that's the biggest thing, is looking at self-reflection as a powerful way to shift right now. Not sure how to describe that exactly, but there's a lot of actionable stuff that comes out of self-reflection that's not in the navel-gazing kind of area, although I like that too.
Well, I know we're trying to wrap it up, but do you encourage journaling and things like that then, and some of that intentional then writing down what some of those reflections? And
I think if somebody is open to that, that's absolutely fantastic stuff. Journaling is great. Mindfulness is great. There's a huge amount of proven benefit by watching your own emotions and beginning to look at it as feedback, so that it's telling you what's going on underneath, and then you can start to separate from there's a huge amount of stuff on it. So anybody that's open to that, I think that is a great thing to do. Not everybody's open to it. And I don't want to make it like a mandatory thing, but if they are open to it, I don't know how the brain can function in a very complex world if we're busy all the time.
Yeah, and that's part of, I mean, that motivation to even walk is because it forces me to quit looking at all the busyness and the distractions, and it's like, and the clicking, right? There's lots of clicking, which can just be really distracting. But anyway, this has been a great conversation. Would love for you to share with how folks can learn more about what you do.
Great. Okay. Thank you. So my website is just my first name, www.aneace.com. My novel is The Eagle That Drank Hummingbird Nectar. It's a novel about personal transformation business. I wanted to write a novel rather than a how-to book because it's a very, you don't teach how to change. It's living it viscerally through a story. But that's also on my website, aneace.com.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you being here.
Thanks, Jana. Wonderful meeting you.
And to our audience, until next time, keep your organizations healthy.